Hello, and welcome to our final backend project. We're going to be building an API, putting together everything that we've learned into a large full-stack website. As part of the Artemis project to bring humans back to the moon, NASA has asked us to explore the next step. The possibility of bringing humans beyond just our own solar system to the Kepler exoplanets. We'll be building a NASA mission control dashboard to schedule missions targeting those Kepler exoplanets. This is the fun part, so let's just jump straight in. Anytime we build a full stack web application with many different front-end and back-end components, it often pays to think about the structure of our project, to do just a little bit of work up front ahead of time, so we're not moving code around all the time as we figure things out. That's not to say that we're not going to make improvements and changes as we think about them, but we do want to have a general idea of how our code will be structured. This is the kind of work that the architect or senior developer on the project often does when the project is just beginning, so that the project gets off on the right foot. The fact that our NASA application is full stack means that we're going to have a server component for the API. So let's make a server folder where that'll live, and we're going to have a client component for the front end. We'll be working with both this API and integrating it with the front end because as Node developers, even if our primary job is building APIs on the back end, we need to understand exactly how those APIs will be used so we can build the right thing. Plus, it's more fun if you can do both the front end and the back end and really see those APIs of ours in action in a full stack web application. Okay, so where do we go from here? One of the things that we do as project architects is to build these architectural diagrams. These help us visualize the different parts of our project and how they interact. One tool that I like to use for this is Lucidchart. Right now, it has a pretty good free tier, but if you'd like, there's other tools you can use, like Microsoft's Visio, there's Glyphy, there's a really old school open source one called Dia, and even things like Photoshop or Sketch. Choose what you're comfortable with. I'm going to call this the NASA Mission Control Architectural Diagram. When it comes to these diagrams, we can choose to be as specific or as general as we'd like. And there's often value in having both very specific diagrams that break down important flows and actions, and also high-level diagrams, which help us and our team to understand how everything fits together. So for now, we'll keep it simple and say that we have a web application, which is our front end. So let's make this nice and give it this blue background. There we go. And this is going to be talking to our Node API. So I'm going to copy that and say the other main piece of our project is the Node API, with the web application sending requests to the Node API. requests which are going to be over HTTP. And this is all part of our NASA Mission Control project, which contains both our web application and our Node API. So I'm going to move that to the back so we can see what it contains. And I'm going to say that it uses this dotted line as this rough grouping of these two different components. All right, that's a good start. We can visualize the two main components of our application and how they interact with each other using HTTP requests. Now that we have a high-level view, which we can expand on, let's get back to our project. Now, we'll get to the front end, but this is a Node course, and backends are where Node really shines. So let's start with what the folder structure should be for our server. We're going to be using our framework, Express, and the pattern most Express servers use is MVC. The MVC pattern can be visualized in a few different ways, but the main idea is that we have models, views, and controllers, and that the user uses the controller in some way, which then updates the model, and the user gets back this updated view in response. So we're going to use this pattern in our server. We're going to be working with data, so we definitely need a models folder, and our API is definitely going to have some routes. So let's create a place for those. Now, what about our controllers? We could create a new folder for those, so say controllers, and have that in our server. But for larger applications, it tends to be good to keep related code together and only separate code that deals with different functionality. We'll see exactly what that looks like when we start writing our server. But for our structure, it means that our controllers are going to live alongside our routes, because the controller defines how we respond to that specific route. So the code that defines our API endpoints and the code for our controllers will be side by side under this routes folder. So let's get rid of that controllers. And what about our views? Well, we're a client-server application. Our client is going to be a dedicated front-end project, and we're going to be sending data, which it will be in full control of displaying however it chooses. And so this is actually a good start. We don't need to overcomplicate our folder structure. Now, we do know that we're going to have a server.js where we'll start up all that goodness that our server does and make use of our routes and models. Now, before we start coding, to get us in the right mindset, it's worth realizing one thing. In these large-scale applications, where we have multiple different pieces, like a front end and a back end, it's common that we create multiple Node packages for those different parts of our application that all live inside of our main project folder. What this means for us is that our front end, our client, will have its own package.json. Our server will have its own package.json. And believe it or not, we'll have a package.json at the root of our project folder, which wraps the two packages for our server and client, so that we can run npm commands from our project folder that perform actions, like starting the server, on each of our inner packages in our server and our client. Now, our package.json should always be created by an npm init command and be managed by npm, as opposed to us, for example, writing out all of our packages by hand. Instead, we want to run the npm install command. So let's get rid of all of these. We'll be doing things the right way with npm very soon. But at least now we have an understanding of what our overall project architecture will be. All right, that's enough for now. There's only so much that we can understand by just talking about it. So let's jump into some code. I'll see you in the next one. Let's go.